Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to be here with Jenna Chambers, who is VP of Sales and Partnerships at Terminus. My name is Ann Merlowski, and I am the VP of Digital Marketing and Performance Marketing at Terminus. Today, we are going to be talking about common sales and marketing alignment tips and some of the myths that we've all heard. We know that this is a really common topic. We all know that this is something we are challenged with day to day. Everyone talks about it, but we seem to just kind of end in the same place no matter what we hear. So we wanted to talk through what are we doing here at Terminus to foster sales and marketing alignment? What have we seen throughout our careers, and how we can go ahead and work together to have a better tomorrow for sales and marketing as we collaborate and bust down silos. Jenna, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So like you mentioned, I'm Jen Chambers and I'm VP of Sales and Partnerships here at Terminus. I think this is a topic that is so close to my heart because I'm actually a marketer by trade. I've sort of like last minute swerved into partnerships and sales and yeah, have been now on both sides of the fence. And to your point, like you read blog after blog, you listen to podcasts, and there are the same tips that come up time and time again for sales and marketing alignment. But I've been reading those for over 15 years and we all still seem to be in the same place. So yeah, I'm looking forward to deep diving into this with you and maybe telling people a bit about what we're trying to do real world versus high level tips. And, hopefully that'll help some people.
Absolutely. If this wasn't a huge problem for everybody, I don't think we'd continue to hear it. We've had books, there have been articles. There's just so many people who are talking about this, and yet we're not making those strides forward. And I think because particularly here at Terminus, the really close relationship we have in sales and marketing has given us the ability to, put together some ideas that have worked for us. And it's really going to be about those personal relationships in your organization. How do you build those personal relationships and take it beyond just the tips and tricks that we've all heard time and time again?
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point. I think we're very lucky that we get on very well. Like we genuinely like each other. That makes a huge, huge difference. And, for some people, you can't expect to be friends with everyone at work. That's not necessarily going to be a tip that go make friends with your counterpart, but it does definitely help. It helps being able to have the maybe slightly difficult conversations that need to be had. It certainly helps with brainstorming. And I think in our case, and one thing that not everybody has the benefit of is that you're a really commercial marketer, like more so than most people that I've come across in my career, that what you can do in Salesforce and with a spreadsheet and with reports is like mind-boggling to me. And my background in marketing, like I think we've got like a true appreciation not only of each other, but of each other's orgs and departments and what they can bring to the business overall, which really helps definitely with that alignment piece. But I know that we've not got too long on this. And so the first thing that I wanted to speak to you about, and you'll have heard this as often as I have over the years, is about sales and marketing sharing goals and being held to the same goals. And that seems to be the magic bullet that everybody goes, that's fine, just have everybody be measured on the same KPIs and suddenly the teams will be aligned. I don't know about you, but I've tried it. And, it doesn't not work, but it also is not the magic bullet that everybody makes out to be.
Well, and it's really tricky to translate it to sometimes sales metrics and marketing metrics. While it's, the nice pie in the sky is to say, yeah, everybody is targeting revenue. Everybody, we want to see the company make money. And that's obvious. But that gets really challenging when perhaps you have an individual contributor on a marketing team that they can't see through the clouds to the revenue. They're writing ebooks or they're writing SEO copy, and they conceptually can see the end of that journey is obviously we want to get people onto the website, we want to get them to convert, we want to get them to come into demos, and therefore that's going to grow revenue for the company. But it's so hard to motivate people on that when they're so distanced from it. Or if their job is to be a graphic designer, how do you explain that and use that as a motivator? And so you have to, I think, find a way where you have a shared goal. And then you also still have those departmental goals that you use to motivate people and that you use to just benchmark your performance in different channels and campaigns. That, those benchmarks are really, really important. And that's what gives you the ability to know this is where I should activate my dollars because it's going to make the most sense based on benchmarks. Therefore, that ties back to revenue. So you almost have to have sub goals inside of your master goals if you have those shared goals and be able to talk about them and explain them to your counterparts in sales. Why does this many views of an ebook mean something to sales? And, obviously when you think about that's engagement of an account, and that account is reading that ebook or, interacting with the ebook, be it that they may not be actually reading it, that's information that sales can then utilize in some way, in some capacity. And so it's also that almost education of not just you're all working towards revenue, but how do you educate each other on the other, smaller goals, those OKRs that don't necessarily translate directly to the master goal, but do translate to production and effectiveness.
And exactly that. And it's understanding what those mean as well. Like nobody is saying, okay, 9 opens of an ebook equals X amount in pipeline. That would be crazy town, but that is the line that seems to get drawn. And that's where I've always really liked an ABM approach, because it sort of instantly flips the perspective and says, okay, we as a group are trying to get after these sets of accounts, and then we're trying to have more conversations with them, we're trying to make them more engaged, we're trying to open more opportunities, get to know more stakeholders. That all becomes a set of goals that everybody can get around then, versus straightforward just pipeline and revenue. Every company in the world wants more pipeline and revenue. Nobody's ever going to say, no, we're good. We'll just stick with what we have. Thanks very much. The point is that there are, tens, if not hundreds of ways to get there. And it's about agreeing together. Do we think that we've got the right plan to get there? Because both teams need to be bought into the plan. And then which of us are going to take which roles and responsibilities to get us towards that plan. And I think that agreement on the strategy is key. It can't be, marketing are going to disappear off into a black box and then come back in 1 month and they're going to give us 20 leads, X amount of page views, and X amount of downloads, and then suddenly sales need to go and convert it at whatever percentage rate. Like that's the wrong metrics to be tracking, because that is what we've done before, but we've just made everybody responsible for everything. It's about taking kind of a more holistic, account-centric kind of like team approach to go into market. And I think probably a good example of something that we've done recently, we're actively working through the Wake the Dead campaign at the moment. So we know what the goal of the campaign is. We know what it is that we're trying to achieve, and all the teams are working together to get to that goal. Nobody at the end of that project is going to say, well, sales did this and marketing did this. Instead, we're going to say the campaign delivered X, and that is what it should be about. There's no who got the last mile of glory, who was the person who had the last conversation that brought the PO in the door. Well, we know, because we designed the campaign together, that the PO will never come in the door unless the whole campaign had worked properly. So I think it sort of like stops it being who did what, and more, was the campaign and the strategy the right thing to do?
Absolutely. And I think it's really that those are partnerships that you're having, not just at a leadership level, but at your individual contributor level. That, how do you make sure that you're properly communicating what's going on, what to expect, what have people seen, having that really strong enablement so that you can have a two-way communication of, hey, I had this person that was on this campaign list. What could you tell me what they saw? And then being able to just openly and transparently share that information back and forth, because then it really is, it's a hand-to-hand, relationship, partnership between the orgs, not just we're all marching towards this, ambiguous revenue dollar.
Well, and I think what's brilliant where we are is like we have not only just between sales and marketing, but like all hands, we've got marketing telling everybody kind of what campaigns and what programs, what's working, what's not working out in market. I've not worked in many companies where the whole company has had a decent overview of that. And I think that transparency is one of the keys there, not just sharing the same goals, but being able to be open and honest with each other about what's working and not working as well.
Oh, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, I think it relates back to, for us in particular, our product serves a marketing audience. And so we're teaching a story of, what works and what doesn't work, utilizing our own product. But I think it's really important for engineers to hear that, for product people to hear that, even in a context where your tool is not coming from the marketing department. It gives them a little bit of context that they are sometimes removed from. They don't have that face-to-face interaction with the actual users on a regular basis. And how else can you provide it if you're not making sure the entire organization is hearing, hey, these are the messages that resonate with our community of buyers. These are the things that we're hearing, particularly from when AEs are having conversations. These are the things we're hearing are pain points that our customers and our prospects are actually experiencing. If you're not giving that to other departments, you're preventing a blocker for you actually growing and making your product better, whatever it is.
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more. I'm from a product marketing background, so I would preach that all day long.
Well, I think, our next tip that we wanted to talk a little bit about, we've kind of gone through how do we get that better, goal-focused mindset. But then there's also the other side is how are you communicating those things that you are doing? How are you actually having tactical conversations about what marketing and sales are independently doing and how is that interwoven? I think that there's this tendency to have meetings for meeting's sake and, could this meeting have been an email? Could this meeting have been a Slack? But there's also the necessity to actually have that face-to-face conversation to the point we were just talking about that if you can't hear what's actually happening out there in the world, how can you change what you're doing and how can you make your programs and campaigns more effective? And so I think, you want to get out of the just scheduling your regular every week you have a meeting where sales and marketing comes and they do show and tell. And
Yeah.
I think that that's the tendency is to have this show and tell or almost a pointing of fingers of, well, you're not helping me do this. How can I do this better? I need you to go do that. And what do you think would be some good suggestions for how you get out of that mentality?
Well, I think first of all, probably not having it as a regularly scheduled meeting unless there is an agreed upon agenda beforehand. Like even as a team leader, my worst thing is coming up to a regular meeting and thinking, I need to fill this hour. It's in the diary. We have to have it. I'm not quite sure. And then you basically just fill it with fluff. So I think, having an agenda that makes sense to your point, that's not just it's not so much about finger pointing, but I think sometimes it can just be a bit of a list. This week we did this. This week we did this. Look how busy we are. Look how busy we are. Well done us. Let's kind of walk away from it. I think making sure that the meetings that you do have are about communication, and that communication needs to be what is working, what's not working, not what you've done wrong and what you've done wrong, but we as a team are experiencing that these messages are landing in market, or whenever we get to this point in a deal cycle, things stall, or we suddenly realize that we never have an answer to this question, or whatever that happens to be, so that there's just those meetings become like symbiotic learning, rather than just kind of reporting on activities and tactics. And absolutely, update each other on campaigns that are coming up. I think rather than saying, things like X has just launched, it's saying in a month's time, we're planning to do whatever, and give both teams time to have input as well and kind of share their experiences. And again, that goes back to that first point we were talking about, where we actually have to agree on the strategy and the tactics and the campaigns that we're using out in market, and that early discussion about them, not marketing saying, right, we're just going to go and do this, and sales saying, okay, well, we're just going to go and have this conversation. Actually collaborating and acting as a team, that's the best use of having those meetings, in my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I completely agree. And I think that's what's been really innovative for me in the atmosphere that we're in our partnership is that I feel like a lot of times our, regular cadence meetings are almost brainstorm sessions, they're not just like, let's look through the data. It's look at the data. Well, what does it tell you? Well, this is what it tells me. What do we need to do to achieve the next thing? What do we need to do collectively? And I think that is really, really unique, that we're not just coming out of that with a list of to-dos. We're actually collaborating actively as we're having those meetings. And we have, for our instance, we also have our revenue operations peer who's joining us in that conversation. And I think that makes it really powerful because that person can then tell us, are we looking at the data the right way? Could there be a data point that we're missing? And has, because of his experience as well, he has insight into the market and insight into our personas and can help be a part of that active brainstorm. And so I think that makes it really, really impactful that we're having a regular cadenced meeting, that we're walking away with fresh ideas, not just agenda that we just cite off all of our to-dos and to-dones that we've completed.
Yeah, and I feel like that makes me feel very supported in the role as well. You know, I don't ever feel like I need to sit in a silo and think, okay, I magically now need to come up with a strategy or a plan, you know, on my own and then just kind of announce it to the rest of the organization. Like it's been sense checked, it's been verified. There's data behind it that we've all spoken about. I think that's maybe another key thing about those meetings that you have, like, you know, where possible, if it cannot be opinion based, if it can be data led, then that's ideal. I think data led creative thinking is like the key part of that sales and marketing overlap, because you still need that kind of, okay, I've tried this in the past, or I think this is going to work, and what about trying this, and that kind of energy and creativity. But if it's just based off like the very last conversation somebody had, or someone's opinion on what the market probably thinks, then it's probably going to fall short no matter how creative the idea was.
Oh, absolutely. I love that phrase. Like, I feel like that's a phrase that should be more commonly accepted, data-led creative thinking. That we're not just coming up with a fantasy. This is not, magic. We're actually grounding it in some reality. And I think that that makes it so much more powerful to be able to go forward and say, okay, like, I have these leading and lagging indicators that say I should do this, and this is what I think we should do collectively. That's where that creativity comes from.
I mean, I love it. Are we actually brainstorming live on this webinar? Like, we've just come up with a new phrase to use internally. This is great. Um, and well, I think this probably kind of like leads us neatly onto the next tip, which is that there seems to be this assumption that if sales and marketing both report into the same CRO, then that will magically just create alignment between the two teams. You know, putting two different departments under one umbrella will suddenly solve a lot of the alignment gap. And you know, you'd mentioned when we spoke about this earlier in the week that you'd read a Fortune article saying that the Fortune 500 companies are seeing a trend towards less and less CMO roles as more and more teams get consolidated under the CRO. And I think, you know, I think it's fair to say that, you know, aligned goals, implying that the leadership understands both teams equally, is just not right. You know, whoever that CRO is, with the best of intentions, if they've come up through a marketing stream, they probably don't quite get sales as much. And if they've come up through a sales stream, they probably don't quite get marketing quite as much. There's a bias towards more one than the other. You know, we hear the phrase marketing-led organizations and sales-led organizations, and really it should be go-to-market-led organizations. It shouldn't be one or the other. But yeah, what's your take on this one?
Well, I think that that comes from, when you're picking your specialty early on in your career, you sometimes like you grab on to what you really are passionate about. And if you're in marketing, often it's I'm really passionate about something creative. I wanted to be a part of the Mad Men experience and flashy ads and all of that. And in sales, I'm not a salesperson, but I think it's more about I want to sometimes very goal oriented, very, target oriented personality, and sometimes, very extroverted. They want to be out talking with people. And so you grab on really early on in your career. And I think it takes reaching across that aisle at an earlier stage in your career to understand what go to market is, what conjoined go to market is. And we'll see over the next, 10, 15 years that as what is go to market evolves, I think it'll force at the beginning of career, early stage career, for people to have more of those collaborative conversations. And that's going to give them more of the skills to be that chief go to market officer in the future. And that's, I think we're seeing this like kind of weird turning point in the community and in the space is what does go to market mean? And there are definitely CROs who understand marketing, and there are definitely CMOs who understand sales. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. There are those people who have kind of done that early on and understand both sides of the business and can definitely lead in a true go to market sense, but it's evolving. And so we can't just say, okay, everybody reports to the CRO. It has to be everybody reports to the right person. And it's, you think about that concept of right person, right seat. It's the title becomes almost irrelevant if the right person is in the right seat. And so we can call it whatever we want, but it needs to be somebody who understands how are you breaking down those individual siloed organizations and helping them to work collaboratively.
Exactly. And having that true appreciation for the skill sets. Because I think in trying to get the teams more and more aligned, it's almost like, we start to talk in terms of you lose the skills that each team has, and that everybody almost needs the same set of skills to get after the goals and the targets. And actually, it's about using the diverse skill set within the team and the combination of all of those skills to get after those targets. And that's the key to unlocking it. And I do think the phrase go to market is the right one to explain that. It's, become a bit buzzy recently, but 10 years ago, I was writing go-to-market plans. And when I was an in-house marketer, it's actually not a new concept. It's just become like the latest buzzword. And I personally can't think of a better way to describe how the commercial organization gets after revenue and pipeline.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's, we talk a little bit about, how buzzwords can kind of create visceral reactions from people. What is a term that, some people have a love-hate relationship with the phrase ABM. They either had a really successful experience and they love it, or they had a really negative experience for whatever reason. And so, I think to an extent, go to market and ABM, they're sister terms. They mean very similar things, but all of it means being really reflective of your customers in market, being reflective of your prospects, being thoughtful about what you say to them, be it in marketing or sales, and helping to work together to solve a problem for the customer or the prospect. Whatever phrase you want to attach to it, it's essentially doing really good, thoughtful, personalized sales experiences.
Yeah, and I think that is the most impactful thing that people can bear in mind is strip away all of the buzzwords, strip away all of the, silos and maybe habits and things that have built up in your organization, and actually take a step back and say, are we, today, tomorrow, next month, whatever the time frame looks like, are we trying to talk to the right accounts at the right time about the thing that they currently care about? And it's as basic as that. And if the answer to that is no, it's time to take a step back and rethink how you're going to market or doing ABM or, whatever phrase you want to use.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Well, it was so great to get to, sit down and have this conversation. I hope everybody who's listening out in the audience enjoyed the discussion as well. We talked through a handful of the tips that are very common to, the sales and marketing alignment myths and tricks. Initially kind of went into a little bit of, you need to have those shared goals. You need to increase communication. And, how do you do that? Sometimes it becomes really practical when you're underneath a common leadership team. And so there's lots of things depending on the specific needs for your organization. I hope that you learned something from us today in our experience, and would love to have the opportunity to connect with anybody who wants to chat more. This is obviously something that both Jenna and I are very passionate about, and enjoy talking about. So you are welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn, and reach out, if you want to continue this conversation and discuss, from our experiences, both in our current roles and, historically, what we've seen, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And, it was just great to be able to be here today.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Anne.